Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. Lethbridge police are looking for 4 men in connection with the assault of a 24-year-old woman. The foxtail weed can be deadly for dogs. We chat with a dog owner who says the city is not doing enough to help keep our pets safe. And the Canadian Mint is rolling out a new coin in honor of one of Canada's most well-known jazz pianists, Oscar Peterson.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Lethbridge police are looking for 4 men accused of assaulting a woman earlier this week. The 24-year-old reported that she'd been assaulted while walking home from work. Police say a verbal altercation with an unknown man escalated after he walked away and returned with 3 others. Police say the woman was punched in the face and shot in the back with a BB gun before the 4 ran away. Criminal defense lawyers in our province are extending part of their job action after meeting with Alberta's Justice Minister and the CEO of Legal Aid. The job action includes members of the Southern Alberta Defense Lawyers Association and the Criminal Defense Lawyers Association in Calgary. Until September 2nd, they're refusing legal aid files requiring bail-only services, courtroom duty counseling, courtroom duty counsel services, and cross-examination. Hundreds of lawyers began the job action on Monday, which was originally set to run until August the 19th. Alberta Health Services has released new information that details how the EMS crisis in Calgary is affecting emergency care in areas such as Airdrie, Chestermere, Cochrane, and Strathmore. Alberta NDP Municipal Affairs critic Joe Ceci says the crisis in our healthcare sector is growing.
Last week, our caucus shared data showing that AHS is declaring a red alert. That's times when there are no available ambulances, hundreds of times a month in Calgary. When there are no ambulances available to help Albertans in the city, that means resources must be pulled from other communities. And we have new data today that shows just how often this is happening. We have obtained information from AHS which shows that ambulances in the communities Airdrie, Chestermere, Cochrane, and Strathmore have been dispatched to Calgary thousands of times in the last 3 years. In the last 3 years, ambulances for these 4 communities were dispatched to Calgary 30,000 times.
CC says that the trends are distressing and that the UCP needs to listen to paramedics on the front lines to address some of the issues. The Alberta government says by reducing red tape, more businesses are thriving in the province. Associate Minister of Red Tape Reduction Tanya Furr says the UCP has removed around 60% of unnecessary regulatory requirements, which has helped in creating more jobs.
These achievements speak to our commitment to cut the unnecessary red tape that gets in the way of Albertans and Alberta businesses. We've received hundreds of ideas from Albertans, Alberta businesses, and industries that have helped make this possible. So the success we have all accomplished on red tape reduction belongs to all Albertans. Together, we've made our province an even better place to do business, invest, find a job, or raise a family. The Alberta government's mandate is to make life easier for Albertans. This means more jobs, more opportunities for businesses to grow and succeed, the return of investment, and Alberta's competitive advantage.
Students attending 3 post-secondary institutions here in Lethbridge now have the opportunity to win a very nice prize. Applicants can apply to win 3 $2,500 scholarships if they're choosing a career path in the agri-food sector. The students have to be attending classes this fall or next spring at either Lethbridge College, the University of Lethbridge, or Red Crow College to qualify. Peter Casarella, the Executive Director of South Grow Regional Initiative, says the agri-food industry continues to grow here in southern Alberta with more than 3,500 farms operating on more than 4.3 million acres of cropland. He hopes this scholarship will nurture the future of the agri-food sector.
The demand for high-quality food products globally is just surging, and southern Alberta is really well positioned to take advantage of that market, not only because we are an intensive agricultural zone and we grow all of the products that a hungry world needs right here, but we're well positioned to commercialize and actually develop food products off of the field crops that we grow right here in southern Alberta. Modern geopolitical events have really increased the demand for this kind of thing as supply chains around the world are hurting and there are fewer crops, food products coming from other traditionally producing areas. The time is now and the opportunity is huge.
Casarella says applicants must apply directly to him before August 31st to be eligible for the scholarships. Foxtail weeds have continued to be a problem here in Lethbridge. A local dog owner voiced her concerns about the foxtails in one of our city's parks on Friday morning. As video journalist Micah Quinn explains now, foxtails can be especially dangerous to dogs when they're ingested.
I think that it's really concerning. It can get lodged in your dog's throat. They can stop breathing. I think it's a bigger problem than it might seem.
Mackenzie Walzer and her dog Loki love to come down to the Riverstone Dog Park in West Lethbridge to hang out and play. Walzer says she sees people picking out foxtail weeds around different areas of the city, and she's worried for her pooch every time they come into the park as foxtails continue to grow.
But yeah, I hope that the city will look at it and realize that it's bigger than it might seem, and there can be a lot of sick dogs, even stray dogs, stray cats out there that could be getting sick, and I just wish more was done about it.
At first glance, these foxtail weeds don't look like much, but if your dog was to get into them, it could be potentially dangerous or deadly.
If it gets into their nose and it's not noticed right away, it's going to travel to their brains.
According to Lisa Krieger, the owner of Southern Alberta Canine First Aid, the foxtail will continue to move backwards if a dog gets the weed in its mouth or nose.
And we don't notice it right away, they're going to go up into their brains. They could travel up behind the eyes, like any kind of sinuses. So that's going to be a big issue. And then the other one is if they're inhaled through their mouth, it's going to then cause problems with their lungs. It could perforate a lung for them. Really, if it's missed, terrible things that ultimately they will need surgery.
Hiroshi Okubo, the park's operations manager for the city of Lethbridge, says the city received more calls last year for foxtail issues compared to this year.
This year, I think we've had a couple dozen, and some of them are related to concerns with their pets. What we've done in the Parks Department is we try to mow it regularly and try to make sure that it doesn't go to seed. But with our limited resources, we can't necessarily cut it down all the time.
Krieger says there are a few tips to implement if you bring your dog to a park with foxtails. She says to try to avoid throwing balls into areas with the weeds and make sure to check the pads of your dog's feet, fur, and mouth and nose to make sure no foxtails have lodged their way in. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
Some restaurants in the city are now allowing dogs on their patios, including the Telegraph Tap House. A manager of the restaurant says they've always been dog-friendly and welcome anyone who wants to enjoy a meal while having their dog by their side. Don Lindwall says there are rules to keep in mind, however, when having your pooch on the patio.
We ask that people only bring animals that do well with other animals, just in case, because there is ones that come by, so no reactive animals. We have had several nervous dogs that have come out, and their owners have always been really great about letting us know, and we make sure to make it a happy experience for all animals. So even if they are a bit more nervous and you want to use it as a training opportunity, we are always game, but make sure that the animals are safe to be around, because we do have children and other animals here all the time. We do provide water, and we have some little treats for our pooch friends.
Lindwall adds that you must always keep your dog on a leash at all times when sitting on the patio. Well, it was another hot day across much of southwestern Alberta. We could use a little bit of water right now. Jeanette Roche is in now with an early peek of the forecast. Jeanette, even though there may be a little bit of rain in the forecast, the sizzling hot temperatures should remain?
Well, this stretch of heat is expected to continue throughout the weekend and into next week, Hal. And now we were under a severe thunderstorm watch as well as a heat warning. So we could see the possibility of some showers this evening and tomorrow, Saturday, developing into a risk of some thunderstorms. And with a humidex of 35, it's no wonder. And to next week, we're looking at temperatures soaring well into the mid-30s. And I will have all those details coming up for you later on in the show.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. The Saskatchewan government has teamed up with 2 international humanitarian groups to bring more Ukrainian refugees to the province. The pledge by Premier Scott Moe is to partner up with 5 humanitarian flights. He says they want to bring more than 1,000 Ukrainian citizens from Poland to Saskatchewan by March 31st of next year. Moe says this is an important and meaningful step in providing a safe refuge for people who have been fleeing the war with Russia.
The province of Saskatchewan Solidaire, Open Arms, the UCC have worked together to help more than 400 Ukrainian citizens escape the ongoing war in their country, including these 2 flights. More than 1,500 Ukrainian citizens have come to this province since this awful war began. And in true Saskatchewan fashion, Ukrainians have been met with kindness in this province. They've been met with support and compassion when they arrive here.
Power has returned to a large portion of downtown Toronto following a major power outage in Canada's largest city on Thursday. The blackout left office buildings, a major mall, university, and restaurants without power after a crane transported by a barge came into contact with a power line.
We were just in our office and working away, and suddenly the lights went out. And we kind of just didn't think a lot about it because power blips happen. And then about, 10, 15 minutes later, we all started talking about it. And, just were sitting and waiting to see what happened and found out that it was a bigger power outage. So decided to just cut our losses and go home for the day. We just canceled our meetings and, luckily we're working from home too, so just moving everything to the end of the day.
It's definitely messed things up here. We had to stop our service and stop serving people, of course, and deal with payment issues and stuff like that. It's been a big commotion, especially with our appliances in the kitchen. Certain things might go bad. We tried our best to, salvage whatever we could. We packed all the food to go and we set them on their way. We're going to lose a lot of money, that's for sure.
A number of scientists and researchers gathered on Parliament Hill to present a 60-meter-long open letter signed by thousands of their colleagues. They're calling on the federal government to boost funding. The group says many graduates receive money from 3 federal agencies, but often the scholarships amount to less than minimum wage.
OSBN is a student-run club at the University of Ottawa, and really what we advocate for is evidence-based decision-making both at the government level and at the university level. One of our mandates very quickly became to advocate for graduate student funding because it became such an apparent issue to us in terms of the overall science and innovation landscape. I guess when I first started in my undergrad, so I'm in my 10th year of university now, it's been a long time. I've often worked many jobs at once just to make ends meet. When I started my master's, I had to take out additional loans because you're then not allowed to work outside of the lab. So I now have about $100,000 in student debt. In my final year of my PhD now, on my mind is how I'm going to pay that off.
The Canadian Mint has launched a $1 coin honoring the late legendary jazz pianist Oscar Peterson. The Montreal music legend is the first Black Canadian and the first musician to be featured on a circulation coin.
Canada is defined by many things, and its contribution to art is a pillar of our heritage. And as we're also defined by our diversity, it is tremendously fitting that it is, and listen to this, the first time that we are celebrating a musician as well as a Black Canadian on a circulation coin. We have celebrated several Black Canadians on our collector coins, but it is the first time on a circulation coin, which means that Canadians will be able to get these coins and accessible to all. It is our hope that for many years to come, every Canadian who comes across this coin in their change will take the time to reflect on Mr. Peterson's exceptional musical and cultural legacy, and in doing so, they will quickly discover how he still brings joy to millions of music lovers in Canada and around the world.
An author who's had a $3.3 million bounty on his head for years was stabbed this morning as he was about to give a lecture in Western New York. 75-year-old Salman Rushdie's 1988 novel, The Satanic Verses, led to death threats from Iran back in the 1980s. New York police say Rushdie suffered this stab wound to his neck as he was introduced on stage at the Chautauqua Institution. He was airlifted to hospital. His condition is not yet known. The attacker was restrained and taken into custody. Actress Anne Heche has died following a brain injury she suffered last week after a car crash. Heche, who was in critical condition and in a coma following the August 5th crash, was taken off of life support today. On Thursday, police were investigating Heche for driving under the influence of drugs. A spokesperson with the police said a blood sample from Heche showed that she had narcotics in her system. The investigation also revealed that Haish's car smashed into a house in a residential neighborhood in West Los Angeles. A fire erupted following the crash with Haish's car still inside of the home. Anne Haish was 53 years of age. Tens of thousands of people converged on Budapest, Hungary for a major worship event called This is the Day. The goal was for believers to lift up the name of Jesus in a display of Christian unity as one family. Peter Wooding from the Global News Alliance spoke to the organizers of the event and has more.
Originally scheduled for 2020, more than 40,000 people flocked to the Puskás Arena in Budapest in Hungary July 23rd for a major Christian music and worship event. It was organised by This Is the Day, who've been coordinating events like these for more than 20 years, but this was their largest ever gathering. With artists from around the world including Bethel Worship, Noel Richards, Michael W. Smith and Martin Smith, it was more than just a concert, but a day of unity and encounter with God. Their international director is Tibor Eros.
We have several purposes. One is, the central one is glorifying God. So we build everything around Jesus. We want to lift him up. That's the main purpose. And then to share the gospel, we always have an evangelistic part, and also it serves as a place where Christians can meet.
And the event founder and organizer Victor Laszlo believes they certainly achieved those goals.
The people really overwhelmed from God's presence and the unity, the family of God together move, together stand up and rise up for only one goal. Jesus is the king above Hungary.
And the impact of that day continues as they receive feedback from thousands of people whose lives have been touched. Peter Wooding for the Global News Alliance.
That's so wonderful to see. Also wonderful to see lots of the sunshine again today. It should be mainly sunny for most of the weekend as well, but there is a slight chance of a shower developing tonight. Full weather details are coming up. The heat warning for much of southwestern Alberta continued, and there's a slight chance of showers developing, however. Jeanette Roche is in now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, will the moisture cool things off just a little bit?
Well, not as much as you might think, Hal. These hot temperatures are expected to last all weekend and into next week. And look at that, by the end of the 7-day forecast, we're looking at the mid-30s. Now, you did mention the rain. We are looking at a 30% chance this evening and into Saturday with the risk of a thunderstorm. High of 33, though, and the temperature in the evening remaining in the teens. So not really cooling down very much at night either. Sunday, looking at a high of 30 with mainly sunny skies. Same thing for Monday, up to 31 degrees on Tuesday. And then there we go on Wednesday and Thursday with a high of 35 degrees with lots of sunshine. So yeah, it's gonna get hot and even hotter. Average high for this time of year, 26, average low 11, 37. That was our high temperature on this day back in 1940, and in 1966, we had our lowest, which was only 2 degrees. 6:19, that is when the sun rose this morning and sunset this evening at 8:54 p.m. So we are in the 14-hour mark. We're sitting at about 14 hours and 38 minutes of daylight. On the west coast, looking at the highs for tomorrow, Victoria sitting at 19 degrees only. Expecting some showers in the morning, cloudy in the afternoon, 23 the high in Vancouver, some slight chance of showers in the morning. Tomorrow, 26 the high in Edmonton, 30 degrees the high in Calgary. Calgary also under heat warning and a severe thunderstorm watch for this evening and into tomorrow. Could see some showers and a risk of some thunderstorms developing. 26 the high in Saskatoon tomorrow. Same thing for Regina. High of 27 in Winnipeg. Mix of sun and cloud, however. There is that slight possibility of some showers in all three of those prairie cities tomorrow, and the Humidex index as well, looking fairly high. 27 the high in Toronto tomorrow. Beautiful sunny skies, sunshine in Ottawa expected tomorrow with a high of 25. Same thing for Montreal, looking at a high of 25 tomorrow with beautiful sunny skies. So get out the sunscreen, get out the sunglasses. It's going to be hot and lovely. 22 the high in both Fredericton and Halifax with chance of showers, both of those cities. High of 23 in Charlottetown, looking at drizzle. Same thing for St. John's, Newfoundland. Could see actually 2 millimeters of rain there and a high of 24. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
TELUS wants to increase the bills of customers who pay by credit card. It has applied to the federal telecom regulator to add a 1.5% surcharge beginning this fall to cover the processing costs that credit card payments incur. The increase, which TELUS says works out to around $2 a month, would apply to current and future customers outside of Quebec. Shaw and Rogers have signed an agreement with Quebecor that will see the Montreal-based telecom acquire Freedom Mobile. Rogers will sell Shaw-owned Freedom to Videotron, which is owned by Quebecor, for $2.85 billion. Rogers hopes the deal will appease concerns of federal regulators about its proposed takeover of Shaw. The agreement is consistent with the terms agreed upon back in June when the deal was first announced. It is subject to regulatory approvals and the closing of the merger of Shaw and Rogers. The U.S. government is investigating part of the seatbelt system on some 2020 to 2022 Kia and Hyundai vehicles. The U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's Office of Defects says the seatbelt tensioners may rupture or explode and release shrapnel, causing abrasions or other injuries. It is aware of 3 separate incidents where the driver's side seat belt pretensioner deployed abnormally, causing metal fragments to fly into the back seat, injuring people. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 187 points on the day to finish at 20,179. The Dow was up 424 points to 33,761. The S&P 500 was up 72 on the day to 4280, and the Nasdaq was up 267 points to 13,047. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down $2.25 to $92.09 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 11 cents to $8.77 US. Gold was up $12.68 on the day to $18.0240 US an ounce, and silver was up 51 cents to $20.82 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $10.75 per bushel, barley's at $7.81, canola's at $18.75, and corn is at $10.87 per bushel. Live cattle were down 38 cents to $140.23. Feeder cattle were down 33 cents to $179.63, and lean hogs were down 68 cents to $121.73. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 78.23 US. Recapping one of our top stories, Lethbridge police are looking for 4 men accused of assaulting a woman earlier this week. The 24-year-old reported that she'd been assaulted while walking home from work. Police say a verbal altercation with an unknown man escalated after he walked away and returned with 3 others. Police say the woman was punched in the face and shot in the back with a BB gun before the 4 ran away. Running a Christian ministry in volatile areas can be quite challenging and extremely dangerous. Coming up, we chat with Jason Law from World Compassion about the work they're doing in countries such as Iran and China and how they're spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ. That powerful interview is coming up shortly. And listen, if you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We'd love to hear from you.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. This summer, the Lethbridge Shakespeare Performance Society returns to the outdoor theater with Shakespeare in the Park. This year, they present one of William Shakespeare's most famous plays, Hamlet, Prince of Denmark. More than just a play about revenge, Hamlet deals with questions about life, love, death, and betrayal. Come for an evening of dramatic entertainment every Thursday in August at Galt Gardens beginning at 7:30 p.m. Discover homegrown produce and homemade products at the Downtown Farmers Market at Festival Square in Lethbridge. Every Wednesday beginning at 9 a.m. until September 4th, you'll find over 15 local vendors selling fresh fruit and vegetables, delicious baked goods, homemade soaps, and so much more. Enjoy the relaxing atmosphere and support local producers and artisans at the same time. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
You know, the spiritual side of life is bigger for some than others. Well, with Bridge City News airing on the Miracle Channel, we often hear from viewers about their spiritual needs, growth, and even questions. Over 50 years ago, a man from Medicine Hat, Alberta, by the name of Terry Law, saw that there was a real spiritual appetite in countries where Christianity was not well known or not even allowed by the governments of those nations. All these years later, World Compassion, the organization Terry Law founded and set up in Medicine Hat, is still going strong today. World Compassion is helping to inform and educate people across the globe who desire to know more about the teachings of Jesus Christ. Joining me now to talk about it from Oklahoma is Jason Law from World Compassion. Jason, welcome back to Bridge City News.
Thanks, Al. Appreciate you having us back. Always a pleasure. Great to speak with you.
You as well. Jason, maybe for our viewers just joining us for the first time, don't know much about your organization, what is World Compassion really all about?
And for 53 years, like you said, we've been focused on reaching nations that are restricted or hostile to the gospel message, really putting an emphasis on empowering the local church there to help them go forward faster in the vision and the things that God's put on their heart to reach their nation. And so it looks different in a lot of the different countries that we work in, whether it's in China or Myanmar, might look different from what we do in Iraq or Iran or places like Afghanistan. So over the years, it has kind of morphed and molded and shaped into just helping the local church meet their needs in those restricted nations.
You know, we're receiving mixed reports, especially when it comes to China, that there's a revival in parts of China, but then in other parts, they're shutting down and clamping down on Christianity, shutting down the churches. What are you hearing?
Yeah, one of the things that we've said in China, I've been traveling there almost my whole life, even as a kid, and a lot in the last 20 years. If you've heard it, it's probably true. China is really big, and some people talk about how tight and restricted and oppressed it is, and others will come back and say, man, it's opening up. And it can be based on a general location of where they're getting that information and what local governments and how they're operating. But generally speaking right now, China absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is definitely being clamped down on in terms of their restrictions, their freedoms from a federal government level. New laws put into place in 2018, 2019, even 2020. This year, March of this year, it's officially illegal to share religious material online. And so you can imagine in today's world how much that has impacted the church. So, you know, we've always provided physical materials. Last year, we actually launched an online platform for our discipleship and leadership training material to get into as many of the hands of the people as we can. Well, that's now illegal. So we run great risk running that on an online platform. So we're having to backtrack, so to speak, and really put an emphasis back on physical books or physical devices, MP3 players, things like that, to get that material into people's hands. So yes, very true. Anytime a government restricts people, though, historically in church, and what we're seeing today is revival. And so I think the answer to that question is it's both. Yes, there's great restriction, but there's also a great hunger and a great revival happening as a result of that.
How about in some of the more predominantly Muslim nations, including Iran and Iraq and even Syria? Are you able to reach people with the gospel of Christ?
Yeah, big boom right now, Hal, in Iran. The church growth rate is over 19%. A couple of years ago, we were hearing numbers at 5%, but they're at 19% right now. That's about 85 million people in Iran, and 40% of them, a recent research poll showed that 40% of them don't identify as Muslim anymore. So that's over 50 million people who, over the last several decades, the last 20 or 30 years, have been slowly turning their back on Islam and reaching out and searching for different things. And I think we're seeing that escalate right now in a very large way. One of the Iranian pastors that we work with, a couple of weeks ago, he shared with us, he goes, you know, the Iranian regime, and maybe I shared this last time I was on, but the Iranian regime has done more for the gospel in the last 100 years than 100 missionaries could have done. And so you've got two generations of people on the earth in Iran right now that don't like what radical Islam has to offer. And so we read that stat that 40% of them don't identify as Muslim anymore. They're not identifying with the faith of their ancestors. That doesn't mean, however, they're running towards Christianity. They're running towards something else. But Christianity and Islam have a lot in common. We're monotheistic, so we believe that there's one God. They understand that Jesus was a good prophet. So really trying to focus on those commonalities to answer some of their questions, but they're searching for truth. And so we're really trying to help mobilize the church there in Iran. We set a goal of reaching 100,000 people with the gospel message this year through our Bible distribution program. And it's really more about empowering an evangelistic movement. Thousands of people in house churches all throughout Iran carrying these Bibles that we're smuggling in and hand delivering it to people who have either reached out through social media or phone calls, through Christian television programming, asking questions about Jesus or asking for a Bible. We're able to literally mobilize people to meet with them one-on-one, putting that Bible in their hand and answering questions about Jesus, getting to know them, further sharing the gospel message. And so in that way, really helping to empower an army of evangelists there, inviting them to be a part of their house churches when they feel it's safe. And so just an incredible thing is unfolding in Iran right now.
You know, it's really interesting how we're sending out people and then tracts, teaching people about the gospel of Jesus Christ in Muslim nations, Buddhist cultures, Buddhist countries as well. But how about some of the African nations sending missionaries to Canada and the United States preaching of the gospel of Jesus Christ? Because they say there's not as much of a Christianity as there used to be here in North America.
Yes, same here in America. Just down the road from you guys, a long way down the road. I've got a friend, just a testimony of that. He's from the UK. And although, we consider them, and they're an ally and they're friendly and they're very similar to our culture, he's coming over here to plant a church. And I think we're seeing that. And I think it's healthy in a lot of ways that, for us, it's like, hey, we're not the only ones that carry this great commission. In a lot of ways, we're moving into, if not already, a post-Christian society. And so there's people around the world that are seeing what's happening in Canada or in the United States, North America in general. And they're saying, hey, you guys, don't forget your roots. Don't forget your heritage. Don't forget this gospel message you reached us with. And I think God's pulling on their hearts and sending them back in a way saying, hey, don't forget, remember. And I think it's healthy.
So Jason, how are you able to reach people in countries where it's very volatile and they're very anti-Christian? So that the governments are not able to work with you as much as you would like, perhaps.
Yeah, well, be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. So you've got to be wise about what you do. There's some places like Iraq where in the Kurdish region, we've got great favor with the local government there. They've always been supportive of what we've been doing. There's other countries like Iran or China or Myanmar where we really don't want the government to know that we're there and what we're doing. One of the things that we do when we are there, and anytime we do a conference or we're talking to people such as our staff over there, or we're leading any of the Bible school students, is that we still honor the local government. God instructs us to honor. We may not agree with them. They may be trying to hurt us. We can still honor them. But that also doesn't mean that we're going to fully abide by their rules. And we believe our first and our high calling is to share the gospel message. That's our mission from the head of the church, from God himself, the creator of the heavens and the earth, the creator of each one of us. And that is the highest mission. And so we're not going to compromise that mission, but we're going to do it in an honorable way, in a wise way, and try not to draw unwanted attention in places that we know it can be restricted or hostile or put people in danger.
Do you ever find yourself smuggling Bibles into some of these volatile regions?
Oh, myself, we use people to do that now. When I was a kid, my dad took us to China, and we actually put smuggling belts around our waist. I remember I was so scared. I was 10 years old. And if anybody watched the program that remembers who my dad was, is his personality, he's giggling about it. And we're on a plane and we have these Bible belts. I went to the bathroom. I tied these belts around my waist, and we put about 6 or 7. We had suitcases full of them. We were taking them into China. This is back in the early 90s. And we got to the hotel room and we literally couldn't get my belt untied. I, out of fear, had to tighten that thing so tight that we used scissors to cut it. But today we, like in Iran, we literally use drug smugglers to help smuggle those Bibles in.
Wow.
They smuggle drugs, they smuggle, TVs, anything in that they're struggling to get in Iran. And so they know the business, they know it well. And we've got a great avenue of relationship in there, and they're a trustworthy bunch, believe it or not. They get the Bibles in, they get them in there safely. And so that's who we use today.
Any of those smugglers come to know Christ?
I don't know for sure. I will tell you this. It was interesting. A couple of years ago, we had one of the smugglers reach out to our guy that coordinates with them on the ground in a neighboring country and asked permission if he could take a few Bibles for him and his family, which I thought was interesting. It's like these guys, all they do is illegal stuff. And so stealing a few Bibles off the top of thousands would, probably go unnoticed. And he bothered to ask the question if it would be okay. I thought that was cool.
Give us an idea about how your methods have really changed over the years, Jason.
I would say probably one of the biggest things is, when I got involved with the organization, and I would say my dad did this in the past too, but maybe I just grabbed it and put more of an emphasis on this, is really empowering the local church. The people there, the Christians there, they understand the language better than we ever will. They understand the predominant religion in the area. They understand the culture, and I appreciate and value foreign or Western missionaries that go and live in these countries that spend years developing all that. But we have to remember that God places us in the body of Christ where it pleases Him, and so He has local indigenous people right there in these countries that He's placed there to fulfill His mission, to fulfill His purpose. And so we have really put a strong emphasis in our model of ministry of training them, equipping them, resourcing them to fulfill the vision that God's put on their heart. So we all share the same mission. That's to go make disciples of all nations. That's the same mission. It doesn't matter. It's just how we go about doing it. The method might be different from one organization, one ministry to another. Well, it's the same thing all over the world. So we hear visions of what these local pastors, these local leaders have in their country, what they need. And then we're going to help train them, equip them, and resource them and work alongside them to empower them to go and reach their country. That model proved amazing during the pandemic where people couldn't travel and things were shut down. Most of our programming, outside of some of the training and stuff that we did, like in Iraq, when they were experiencing the same thing with COVID that shut down, our programs didn't stop. No one had to come home. We didn't have to travel to make it happen. We have the team and the infrastructure in place that live in these countries to keep things moving forward. So a few adjustments and we kept rolling.
Now, is there an example you can share of how God orchestrated miracles to really help you accomplish your goals and tasks?
Oh man, yeah, I'm sure there's more than I even know what happens every single day. These Bibles coming into Iran right now, I think it's a miracle in and of itself that these smugglers are able to get them across. Turning blind eyes at checkpoints and getting them through. I think I shared. I wish I could always remember what I share in these interviews, so I'm not redundant. But we got held at gunpoint in Iraq a few years ago, and just the favor of having the right people around us that made the right phone calls and some answered prayers, got us released from this Iranian militia that was holding us. We're trying to print materials in China right now. Printers don't want to print Christian materials. It's high risk. And, we weren't able to print a lot of the end of last year and the first part of this year. And we finally found a printer that's a Christian printer, and they're willing to do it, kind of underground under the radar. And so those things are miracles to us. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but when people aren't wanting to do things that's going to put their business or their life or their family safety on the line, and they do, that's a miracle to be able to get, a couple thousand students into our discipleship program because of it. And we call those miracles, we call them wins.
So we talked about some of the risks the new believers face in some of their home nations. What about some of the barriers that people are also experiencing in their quest to know more about Christianity?
I think one of the big barriers, like in a country like Iran, would be social persecution. So you have social persecution and then government persecution. Iran, you have both of those things. And so it's just a lot of stress sometimes on these people to say, okay, I don't even know if I can talk about my faith or learn about my faith because my wife, the person that I sleep next to in bed, is not a Christian, or my husband is not. And so they have to navigate things like that every single day. What is their family going to do? Is their family going to disown them? And on top of, government restrictions. In China, it's probably more of a government restriction, as I shared earlier. Just, how do they navigate getting access to material now that it technically is illegal to share religious content online? How do you study? How do you find, for people that want to go to Bible school, how do you go to Bible school? Right. How do you really dive in and develop that spiritual maturity? Because it's teaching materials, it's resources that we take for granted. It's just, in our everyday lives, it's so accessible. We can Google something, we can pull something off the shelf, we can go to Amazon, we can buy something. Those things are blocked in China right now. And so they're just having to navigate all the challenges that come with that. And that's one of the things we're trying to help them do.
Jason, we only have about 30 seconds left here, but how can people find out more information about World Compassion?
Yeah, we need people. We need partnership. They can go to worldcompassion.tv, learn about us. I encourage everybody, learn about the people that you're partnering with. We're 53 years strong. We've got a great legacy, a great heritage, a strong team. And I invite people to be a part of it with us. We consider financial partners, people who join with us with their resources, with their prayers. We consider them just as much a part of our team as anybody in this building who's on staff with us right now, because we can't do this without you guys. So I invite people, check us out online, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, learn about us, and then jump on board. We need you. We got a lot of out in front, especially closing out 2022 here, that we have to accomplish yet.
Jason Law with World Compassion, thanks so much for joining us today from Oklahoma.
Thanks, Al. Thanks for having me.
Health and wholeness is a quest for many. People have different thoughts on supplements, doctors, and healthcare. So what role should nutrition play in our public healthcare system, and what role should personal responsibility play in the ways of our health? Joining me to discuss health, lifestyle, and nutrition is Chris Robinson from Lethbridge's own Purple Carrot. Chris, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Okay, so Chris, you're a nutritional consultant, right? And you've been a longtime entrepreneur in Lethbridge, and your store has just recently moved, or I guess expanded is probably a better way to say that. So maybe just give us a quick little backstory on why you moved.
We opened just over 5 years ago, and we started really little, and we didn't expect to grow so quickly. We have a lovely, loyal customer base here, and there's so many wonderful local companies, and we found we outgrew our space really, really quickly. So we were full. We had no room in our store, and so we needed to expand. So we moved down the street to the old Shots building, and now we have 3 times the space. So
yeah, it's interesting. I know we were talking a little bit beforehand about kind of like the need for these healthcare foods or health like nutritional foods now, these stores that carry these kind of products and stuff. So does that kind of tell you a little bit about the choices that people in Southern Alberta are making?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you mentioned earlier that, personal responsibility. We all need to be responsible for our own health, and our choices we make have a huge impact on our health. What foods we put in, the air we breathe, the people we spend time with, and how much time we get out in the sun. There's what we believe, so many things like that, they actually affect our body. And so we want to provide a place where we can provide those things that people need to feel better. And when we take time to take care of ourselves, our health is better. We want to be a part of that for other people.
Mm-hmm. Now, have you always been into health and nutrition?
Absolutely. I grew up on the coast. My parents are super healthy hippies, tie-dye, jean shorts, that sort of thing. We grew wheatgrass in our dining room growing up. My doctor 30 years ago was prescribing vitamins. I saw a chiropractor years ago before it was cool. We grew all our veggies, and for me, it was a part of how I grew up. It's a part of who I am. The smell of a health food store is home to me.
Mm-hmm. So then when you came from the coast to Southern Alberta, did you notice there was a huge gap in the market? And is that why you started your business?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I moved here just over 15 years ago, and I found I was having to go everywhere. And then when I started my nutritional consulting business, I was sending my clients everywhere. And so my business partner, Kathy, and she was my receptionist at the time, we were like, man, what could we do? And like, let's open our own store of all of our favorite things. And then that way we have a one central spot, for us to go to, but for the people who were, supporting and what have you, that they have somewhere to go to as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So as a nutritional consultant, what changes have you noticed in the local population, let's say like in relation to diet?
I think people are looking to do better. We've noticed in the last few years, oh shoot, there's some stuff going around that could affect our health. And so people are thinking about that. What can I do to make myself healthier? And so we have people coming in, what can I do to support my immune system? What can I do to prevent illness? What can I do this winter? What have you? How do I support these systems in my body? And so we're seeing a lot more of that than we were 2 years ago. A lot more questions on immune support and how do I be healthier? How can I ward off infections?
So what do you tell them? How do you ward off infections?
Well, I think the biggest thing is take care of your body. We need to eat good nutrient dense foods. The more nutrients we get in, the more we have we eat for a reason. We eat to get nutrients. So we need to make sure we're eating nutrient dense food. We're eating lots of vegetables. We're eating fruit. We're eating good quality foods, and we're not eating too much sugar. I mean, sugar in particular, if you can cut down or cut out sugar, that's the best thing you can do for your immune system. So I always tell people, get in lots of good and try not to get in too much bad.
Okay, there you go. That's great advice. I have a real problem with sugar myself. I'm a sugar
Yeah, well,
holic.
it's so addictive. It's more addictive, they say, than cocaine. Like
Oh my goodness.
it's bad, and it's so common. And young kids all the way up to our seniors,
Yeah.
it's addictive, and it tastes delicious.
I'm
But
in trouble.
there's so many, but there's so many really good, healthy foods that are delicious too. And I think that's something people miss. We don't realize that you can eat healthy, and it doesn't have to be like you're eating cardboard every day. You can eat really delicious, amazing, healthy foods, and they taste good, and they're good for you.
So now what about food sensitivities? This is like a huge topic that's come up lately over the past more recent years. I know I myself have certain food sensitivities. So, I know there's many ideas about the sources and causes, but can you maybe give us an example about how you could suggest a path to managing these food sensitivities?
Yeah, and that's actually the basis of my practice. I predominantly deal in food sensitivities and intolerances. And there's a variety of theories as to why this would happen. And in my opinion, in my experience, I think it's a perfect storm of a bunch of things. So stress will affect that. Chemical exposure, chemical is probably not the appropriate word, but toxin exposure, pesticide exposure. Our bodies have systems in place to naturally encourage elimination of toxins, but we're so bombarded by what we put in our hair, what we put on our skin, what's sprayed on our food, what's painted on our walls. I mean, we're exposed to so many toxins. We're adjusting how we're growing our food. We're doing weird things to our food. When you look at the ingredients, you go to the store and you look at that list of ingredients on there, we don't know what half of them are. So we're looking at preservatives and what have you. Like there's so much imbalance when we're constantly, bombarding ourselves with antibiotics and what have you. We deplete our good bacteria, and there's so much research on the microbiome now and our good bacteria. So when our microbiome is out of balance, that's a factor. So there's so many things that play in. And so if we're looking at improving or trying to ward off or trying to avoid food sensitivities, it's eat a variety of different foods. So don't eat the same thing every day. That's key. So overconsumption is another big cause of sensitivity. If you're eating the same thing every day for breakfast or every day for breakfast, lunch, and supper, what have you, your body can become overwhelmed with that. So eat a variety of foods. Again, eat nutrient-dense food. Eat foods where you know where that food came from. Where does an apple come from? A tree? Where doesn't it come from? We know where certain foods come from. So eat real foods. Do you know where FD&C yellow came from, or disodium guanylate, or propylene glycol, or those weird things that are in our food? We shouldn't be eating those things. So eat real foods. Eat less sugar again, and affect your immune system. And de-stress is huge. But there's a lot of things. Reduce your toxin exposure. That's really important.
So would you say then eating organic is maybe the way to go?
I'm a fan of eating organic for sure. I try and eat as much organic as possible. To me, it just makes sense. If there's less spray on there, there's less things that my body has to deal with. So the cleaner food that I can eat, the less work my detoxification pathways have to do, the less work my liver has to do, the less work my kidneys have to do, and that's good for me. So that's what I want. So like I said, less toxin exposure. And if one of the ways I can reduce toxins is by making sure they're not on my food, I do that for sure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So would you say that food sensitivities are the same as allergies, or are they maybe two different things?
No, they're different. So like a true allergy, like a peanut allergy, is different than a food sensitivity or a food intolerance. And so depending on what practitioner you're seeing, so if you're seeing a doctor for allergies, they'll look for a particular antibody in your blood, or you can see a naturopath for a different blood work and they'll look for a different antibody, and that would be a food sensitivity or an intolerance. It's typically where we're not seeing something in the blood, but you're like, I know when I eat gluten, I feel crummy, but maybe your doctor says there's no allergy, or your naturopath says there's no sensitivity, but there's something going on there. And usually those intolerances are usually more when you're just not breaking down that food properly. So lack of enzymes, which would be another cause of food intolerances. We're just not breaking down our food properly.
Like, I guess, like how you're living, a lifestyle, even like a healthy home, for example. How does a home relate to allergies with food sensitivities? Is there a relationship there?
Oh, it's huge. For sure. I mean, and it's sort of what came first, the chicken or the egg. So if we have food sensitivities, we're going to be more likely to be reactive to other things in our environment. If we're reactive to things in our environment, that can affect us having more food sensitivities. And so again, when we look at, our air fresheners and our hairspray and our cleaning supplies, and there's some really alarming and compelling information about our cleaners we use in our house, about I never like to name names, but the Febrezes or the Glade plugins and what have you, and the toxicity that those cause.
Yeah,
And
those typical ones that you pick up at the grocery store or wherever, right?
yeah, your body has to deal with that. Everything you breathe in, everything that touches your skin, everything that you're consuming, your body has to deal with that. Your liver has to deal with that. Your kidneys have to break that down. We have to try and get rid of that. And a lot of the times we just can't keep up. We can't keep up to the toxic load we're exposed to. We should be able to. Our body should be able to do it on its own, but we can't. And so eliminating those toxins in our house are huge. And there's some really incredible studies, and sorry, I should have had one off the top of my head and I don't, but the correlation between allergies and toxins in the home and how many health problems they cause.
That's interesting. So, I mean, we want to have a clean home, obviously. So what is the alternative then if you don't want to break out that Mr. Clean or whatever? I've heard that there's like organic products out there. Is that the way to go?
Yeah, there's lots of cleaner products out there. I mean, really, in all honesty, most of those products make the job easier. They're going to melt away the scrubbing bubbles, that sort of thing. So it's elbow grease. Elbow grease is your biggest alternative. And so, vinegars and baking sodas, super simple, super cheap. They work well. You just got to work a little harder for that. But there are a lot of products out there. We carry all sorts of natural cleaners and what have you that work really well, and they smell good. And they smell good from essential oils that are in there. So there's no toxic chemicals or what have you. So there's a lot of products that are out there, but you can use really simple things that you probably already have in your home that work really well, so long as you're willing to put a little muscle into it.
Yeah, no, interesting. I'm going to give that a try. Maybe talk about the relationship between food choice and our emotional well-being, because we often think physical or physiological when it comes to food, but it can affect our moods and our emotions as well, and just everything mentally, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, they talk about in natural medicine or in the natural health industry, the gut-brain connection, and it sort of goes both ways. So if your guts are unhappy, you have an imbalance in your microbiome, there's too many bad guys, not enough good guys, that can affect your mental well-being, and vice versa. So if you're stressed, if your cortisol levels are high and you're running ragged and what have you, that's going to affect that. And so we'll see that, oh, I got butterflies in my tummy, or, I'm nervous. So people will sometimes have to run to the washroom if they're nervous. And so it goes both ways. And so when we have a healthy diet, and we have a healthy gut, that can affect our mental well-being. And when we work hard at having a happy mental well-being, and we're doing the things we need to do, we're having self-care, we're getting outside, maybe you're meditating or praying or doing whatever you do to calm yourself, that will have a positive impact on your digestive system and therefore the rest of your health as well. So it goes both ways.
Mm-hmm. Do you have maybe an example of a really dramatic change in one of your clients who maybe switched their lifestyle like this, maybe switched to these organic products or switched to organic foods instead? What kind of a difference did it make in them?
Oh God, I have hundreds of stories. One of my favorites is one more recently. It was a customer came into the store, and I knew her a couple of different ways. So she wasn't actually my client, but she came in the store and she's like, I'm so inflamed, my joints hurt, my feet hurt, I'm having hot flashes all night, I feel terrible. And I was like, okay. So I suggested that she follow an anti-inflammatory diet. So basically an anti-inflammatory diet is we take out foods that cause inflammation. So I find dairy, gluten, corn, sugar are the big ones. So I suggested she pull out those foods and increase her vegetables. And so then a week later, she emailed me and she's like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. This is terrible. I just want to eat marshmallows and s'mores. Like, okay.
That would have been the hardest week of my life to cut out. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
so
I love popcorn. So like you have to eliminate corn and, you know, of course the carbs, the gluten, the sugar.
Yeah. And so it was a lot. And so she was freaking out. I said, you can do this. Right now it's hard, but this is that emotional eating. You want to crave those foods, make you temporarily feel good. So stick through it. It's going to get easier, I promise. And then a week, maybe 2 weeks later, I see her walk in the store and she's walking towards me with this look on her face. And I was like, oh no, she's going to be so mad. And she was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how good I feel. She's like, my joint pain is gone. I feel so amazing. I'm not having hot flash tonight. She's like, I feel so good. I can't even believe the difference. And then that's the way she just continues to eat, because she feels so good that way, that she just, you know, it's not worth it to eat the s'mores or the McDonald's or whatever it is she wanted to eat before. And that's the thing, it's hard at first, and we're emotional creatures. We emotionally eat. So when you make a dietary change to start, it's difficult. But if you can get past that and then you start seeing the benefits from it, it's so much easier to stick to it. And then it's worth it.
Yeah, what a great example that is. I love that. It's an actual real life example. And it just goes to show you don't necessarily need those prescriptions. Sometimes it's just eliminating certain things that we're just consuming a lot of. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, it's our food. Your food is your foundation for your health. We have to start with food if we want to be healthy. And vitamins and supplements and herbs, man, they have a place. And again, I could tell you a million stories about those where like I'm blown away at the results. But you can take the best vitamin in the world or the best this in the world or what have you. If you don't have that foundation in place of eating well and drinking lots of water, nothing's going to improve. So we want to start with that foundation of a good diet.
Yeah, fantastic advice. Chris, thank you so much. It looks like we are out of time, but we appreciate you coming on today and educating us like this.
My pleasure. It's my favorite thing to talk about.
That's great. Chris Robinson is the owner of Lethbridge's own Purple Carrot and a nutritional consultant. We're so glad to have her on today. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.